everyone. I'm super happy to see you again and welcome to the first Markham Grid session of the year. I hope 2026 has started very well for all of you. So, for today's session, I want to start with a line my guest shared on her LinkedIn earlier this week, and I think this perfectly sets the tone of our session today. So the quote where we are finally saying out loud what everyone knows, that internal communication teams are doing strategic work. This is a topic I know will resonate with many of us. It's a conversation that I'm very glad that we are having now with a special guest, Regine. So before I let Regine introduce to her, I would like to say a few words about her. So, Regine Nelson is a global internal and employee experience leader with a strong background in executive communication, transformation, and leadership partnership. What I really appreciate about Regine's work is that she operates exactly where many of us live every day, between plans and strategy. Means between what looks good on paper and what actually works in real life. So, side story, she's actually one of the first people I followed on LinkedIn when I was looking for resources and inspiration, and also when I wanted to grow more strategically into roles and to better understand what that shift really looks like in practice. I really needed this kind of insight from someone who were already there and the path, the journey. And it's something that I found with her, so I'm very happy she accepted my invite. And I think you know that today our session is gonna talk about what strategy really means in communication, how it differs from plans, how can we all stop just doing things and start driving real impact into our profession. So Regine, over to you. I'm really happy to have you today. Welcome. Thank you for being here, and I will let you introduce yourself.
Yes. Oh, thank you very much. Those were very kind and thoughtful words, Marine. I really appreciate that. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to see familiar faces on screen and in the participants list as well. And I'm sure a lot of you will be watching the recording of this, as you may have other things happening at the moment. So I appreciate you as well. As Marine said, I've been working in comms, which is going to sound crazy, since 2003. I started off in external communications for my first 6 years, working at agencies, hospitality firms, focusing on travel and tourism as well as government. And when I got put on an internal project for another organization, I realized that I could have way more impact than I could externally. And I sort of pivoted in 2009 as a result. And so I've been doing internal comms since, and I completely love it. I'm enamored with it. And if you've ever seen any of my content on LinkedIn, my main focus and priority is to really elevate internal comms as a function and the people who work in her field. And so I'm super excited to be here with you to share not just ideas and thoughts that I have, but also actual things, like Marine says, right, that I'm doing to help me be more strategic, and the stuff that I share with you to be more strategic.
I love that. Thank you so much, Regine. So, Regine, I would like to talk about what strategy really means in internal communication. And I would like to start with this question. Many internal communication teams confuse plan with strategy. So how do you clearly explain the difference, especially to leaders who think a timeline or a content calendar or channel optimization is a strategy?
So people conflate productivity with strategy quite a bit. And so I think that's where the confusion comes from. A content calendar, a timeline, all of that stuff is just operational infrastructure, right? So it's a schedule for you to follow. Again, it's that productivity. It's not a strategy. A strategy, though, is actually a thesis. Okay. And a thesis, it says something like, okay, if we communicate about this to this particular audience, we're going to move the needle on something that the business actually cares about, right? That's your strategy, right? So it's about the choices that you're going to make. What are we prioritizing? What are we deliberately saying no to or not saying yet? And then what's going to happen if people misunderstand this? That is what strategy is. So if you see, I started doing video now weekly on LinkedIn. And if you look at my strategy pillars, I'm only doing it for three reasons. Now, how I execute on that is going to look different. And I said I've been doing those three, I've been following those three strategies since last year because it's apparent also in the text content that I have. So again, the stuff that you're doing, that's the tactical stuff. The reason why you're doing it and how you're going to do it, that is actually strategy.
Yes, I agree. I don't know if you had that earlier in your career, but for me, it's always very common when a leader or a manager asks me for a strategy for channel optimization or strategy for content calendar. And I feel a little bit frustrated because for me, this is not what we call strategy. For me, it's misnamed, and it's like we cannot move forward. It's like we need to stuck to this tactical practice things while we should see the global pictures, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And I mean, this begs a larger question, and that's not what we're here to solve because I'm not trying to boil the ocean today. But internal comms folks don't really understand the difference between strategy and tactics. And I'm sorry, our managers don't either. And some of our senior leaders don't either. Right. So it's not necessarily our problem to solve it for everyone else. But as long as we can stand 10 toes down on our understanding of what strategy actually is and what tactics actually are, then we can work upwards to say, okay, oh, do you mean a tactical plan? Is that what you mean? Right? Like gently massage the conversation to get them to understand that you're trying to speak their language, but sometimes they're not making sense. So you gotta focus on what's reality. It's in the dictionary. Go to Webster's dictionary and look it up. It's there, you know?
Yeah, agreed 100%, and you sum up it perfectly. That's why I would like to ask you, when you are asked to build a com strategy, what are the first strategic questions asked before jumping into execution? How do you start? What is your approach?
Okay, yeah, that is easy, right? Number one is I'm going to tell you what I never start with. I never start with, okay, so we're going to do an all hands. We're going to send out an email. So here's my campaign idea. No, hell no. Hell to the hell no, right? I ask four questions. Okay, four questions. Number one, what is the business problem we're actually trying to solve? Who specifically has to believe something differently? Why do they need to believe it now? Is something we can do later? What's the actual gap that we're trying to fill? And then what behavior changes if they believe that differently? Okay, everything else, channels, plans, timeline, the design of it, that all flows from those specific answers. If we can't answer those four questions clearly, then I'm not ready to execute what you want me to. You're still ideating, you're still exploring. When somebody presents something to you, ask those four questions or something similar to those to get to the root of the actual business problem. You will go far.
Yes, it resonates with my personal experience as well. I would like to ask you, at, do you have a particular moment in your career where internal comms move from tactical support to strategic contribution?
Yeah, I mean, I do. And the truth of the matter is, it's a lot of how we respond to things, right? So like if a leader says, "Can you put together a message about this?" Right? Of course, our response is usually, "Okay, yeah, let's do it. What do you need?" Right? But the strategic response is going to say, "Hey, before we create a message, I need to understand three things." Right? One thing is asking, okay, can I do more tactical stuff for you? Like, how can I do that? And the other one is actually stepping into a leadership position and saying, okay, cool, I got that. We can do that, but help me to help you, right? Be better. So I think if we want to be seen as more than the team's that execute, that just do the to-do list. We have to really start being true business partners. And that's the only way to do that. Change the conversation entirely. Don't say you're not going to execute, but say yes. You see how I just said, hey, before we create that message, right? That implies we're going to create the message. I need to know these things first. Don't just run with it. Never, ever just run with it. Just one more thing, just this, just that. To what end? The jests are just going to keep coming if you keep saying yes to them.
Yes, I think it's also a very important topic to learn how to put boundaries with respect and make our stakeholders, leadership understand why we need that because this is part of the strategy we try to implement. And that's why also I would like to ask you, what do you think actually keep communication out of key business conversation? Is it what you just mentioned, the fact that sometimes we say yes easily, we jump on the tools that we want to implement? Is it the lack of visibility on the overall pictures, or maybe a mix of everything? What is it for you?
It's a mix of everything, I think. How we respond, how we describe our own value, even, right? Um, a lot of people are echoing the same things I say online publicly, right? We lead with things like output, volume, speed. I did this in this time, and I did so much of it. I put out 20 pieces of content this year. So what? So what? Like what did the 20 pieces of content actually do? Right? So when we change the language, change what we say, if we change what we say, then we can change what we do. Okay?
Yes.
And that starts with what you even say to yourself, people, right? Like we are an internal communications function. For goodness sakes, like what are you telling yourself internally about what your role is at the organization? Are you waking up every morning and going, how can I be the best order taker today? Or are you waking up in the morning and thinking, what can I do today that would provide strategic value to the organization? If you're internalizing those thoughts and those ideas, then they will start becoming a part of the way you think naturally. And what you think naturally is going to outpour from your mouth, from your mind, so that others can see that as well. Right? So it starts from what we say and how we say it, yes, not just to our stakeholders, but to ourselves.
I will just say amen to that, Regina. And it's very interesting that you mentioned what we say to ourselves, because I do think we might say or behave in a way that for people, we are just the team that executes. So that's why I would like to ask you what kind of language or behaviors we can implement to be seen as a business partner. I don't think
Yeah.
of course, we need to say to ourselves that we are strategic, we earn our seat at the table, we deserve everything except less. But in concrete, real case, when you are facing different stakeholders, leadership, what do
Yeah.
you suggest to someone who wants to have this posture but needs a little bit of encouragement?
Yeah. So a couple of things, right? Right now is a challenging season for a lot of people. Some people have jobs, some people don't have jobs right now. And a lot of people are grateful to have those jobs that they have. And so they may be in a position that they're bending backwards to make sure to not push against and create tension, right? So they become that internal comms people pleaser, right? That's the easiest way to say it. Um, and take it or leave it. People pleasing in your personal life never helps, and it also doesn't help in your professional life. If anybody has ever told you that, no. Senior leaders don't like yes people. Point blank. If you walk away from anything that I have said in this conversation, don't be a yes man, woman, them, they, whatever, right? You have to be able to push back strategically. You're not going to nitpick at every single thing that they say. It's like a marriage, right? Like my husband likes things a certain way, I like things a certain way. But there are not many hills I'm willing to die on, but there's three or four. And when those opportunities come up, that's when I push back, right? So again, being strategic in that as well, right? It's not saying, okay, Regine says I got to be strategic, I got to push back. No, no, no. What about this? What about that? Hell no, that's not what I'm saying, y'all. I'm saying, what are the three things, right, that you think are super important that you want to convey? So that way you can rehearse and you can practice and you can nail it. So that way, when it comes up, you're able to think and give that strategic guidance and advice on, right? The other thing that I think practically that we could be doing is building more relationships within the organization, right? Like, y'all know, if you've met me, if you've spoken to me, heck, if you follow me, you know that I'm a people person, right? And when I have one-on-one conversations with people, I am laser focused to what they are saying. I am in tune with them. It doesn't hurt that I also have a Christian life coaching certification, but I'm also just a general person who is interested in people. Not only do I want to know how well you are, how good you are, I want to know what's holding you up at night, right? Because if I can help you either give some advice or connect you to something or someone, I have hit a part that really will have impact for you. I'm giving you these slow ball examples, and I hope that you're able to extrapolate these little examples into your work as well, because that's what I do with senior leaders, right? It doesn't matter if it's the first 90 days at an organization or your ninth year. You want to be meeting with senior leaders, even if it's a 15-minute conversation, to kind of get to know them a little bit more personally and professionally. So that way you can understand what's really keeping them up at night. You'll start seeing some recurring patterns the more conversation you have, and you'll realize which things will make the most impact, right? In order to be strategic and to get your seat at the table, you have to play two games, okay? The two games are make sure that the business gets its money. That's the best way to say it, right? And then the next game that you're playing is for my manager or skip level, depending on how close you are to the C-suite, who's over my department? I want to know what keeps that person up at night. Because the more that you can help alleviate that person's problems with your function, which in our case is comms, the more value and the more, and I say this, I dare say this, the more perceived value you will have. Because perception is everything. Perception is 100% everything. I hope that was concrete enough for you, because I don't want to belabor the point. You know I can talk, so.
I know, but it's great and so inspiring. It personally gave me a sum of courage to impose myself a little bit and to be more strategic when I do my task. But this also lead to another question that I was asking myself when you were explaining. Let's pretend I start a new job and I have a few conversation with head of marketing, sales, product, different stakeholders. How can I show how can I not be this yes person that you were mentioning at the very, very beginning when I start a new job and I want them to feel comfortable enough to work with me. I want to build relationship, but at the end, I don't want to be people pleaser. I don't want them to think that what they did before will always work with me. So how can you balance that when you join a new company or when you are a new manager, for instance?
Yes. So that's an excellent question, right? So that starts first knowing your boundaries. Okay. So you're coming into a role, let's say internal comms manager at a company that has global offices, right? And you are the singular internal comms person for this particular example. When you meet with these individuals, before even meeting with them and before even accepting the job, you need to understand what you will and what you won't do in the role. What are the parameters, right? What are you tasked with? Because sometimes people get so excited that we finally got an internal comms person and they start giving you a ton of their to-dos. Okay. And that's not strategic. That's not even strategic for them because I guarantee you they didn't sit down and go, which of these will be the most impactful that I can give to Marine to do? Right. So once you understand, okay, this is my line, I was brought in to support the CEO and the CFO. I'm not supporting the chief people officer yet. Okay, I'm going to get to yet in a moment. You want to establish the work and framework with those two individuals or whoever it is, right? I gave you the CEO and the CFO, for example, how you're going to work with them, what cadence you're going to be in contact with them, and how proactive you're going to be. After everyone else is going to come to you and say, oh, you're the new internal comms person. Can you help me with this? You're going to have your boilerplate template that says, this is a great idea. I've got a lot on my plate right now because I'm working directly with the CEO and the CFO. Here are some templates and things that I put together for you that can help you with these tasks. If I have some bandwidth, I will let you know. But if you need additional resources, please let the CEO and the CFO know that my bandwidth is full and you would like additional support. Okay. The reason why I say this is because traditionally, you will say yes and yes and yes and yes and yes because you're like, oh my gosh, this is exciting. I'm new. There's so much I can do. I met this person. They need my help. Those people are emotionally traumatizing you by dumping on you. That's what they're doing. They're scared. They're afraid. They're not expert internal comms. This is an internal comms person. I'm going to give them everything. They'll figure it out, right? You don't want that. You don't want that. You don't need that because there's 24 hours in a day. And baby, you got to sleep 8 of those hours. And only 8 of those hours should be used for work. Those other 8 is your free time. Unless you want to spend 15 hours of work a day working, don't say yes to all of these people and all of these random requests. Understand your fine line, right? And see where it is. And even when the CFO and the CEO who have you and your plate is full and they ask you for something else to do, your response should be, I'd be happy to do that, but which of these other priorities that I need to drop in order to accomplish that task for you? Period, period, period. You are not an endless well of workflow, okay? You sleep, you have a life, okay? You may have a pet, you may have a child, you may have a partner, okay? They are deserving of your time because at the end of the day, you can get a rift tomorrow, and then what? Okay, so please, for the love of all that is good in this world, set your freaking boundaries, people.
Is it a part of, for you, part of speaking the language of the business, saying no, set boundaries? Is it something that you did along your career or you did when you got to more senior roles? How does that look in practice for you?
Yeah.
For
So,
instance, with your CEO, when you are in touch with your CEO, what's
yeah,
happened if he wants you to do something that has nothing trust strategic, it's more tactical, or your plate is just overwhelmed? So how do you posture yourself and how do you try to speak the same language with him or
yeah.
her?
Yeah. So there's two things I want to be super clear and upfront about in all of the situations and the scenarios that I've given. Number one is I have built a lot of good rapport and trustworthiness with the senior leaders or any leaders that I have served. Okay. And it's important to establish rapport before you can even push back more significantly than you would, right? So at Couchbase, for example, we had, because now we're a private company, but when we were public, we had a 13-week cadence where it would be earnings. We would have to push that out, right? So I understood how the organization worked. So I knew when were the most critical times for the senior leaders of the organization and where, again, this doesn't happen all the time, but where and when I would have to put in an extra few hours of work that week or that day, right? Boundaries does not mean that you say, no, these are my boundaries. I'm in this box. I'm not going to do this ever because this is what I do. I'm holding firm. That's not what boundaries are. You need to bend like the weed and not break like the stick, people. It's a toxic environment if you are bending like the weed every single day. That's not a good environment. But a couple of times a quarter, a handful of times a year, yes, right? Because at the end of the day, there are a lot of tactical things that need to get done. It may not be strategic for you in particular, but that person is coming to you because maybe they think from their point of view that it is strategic to have you in particular participate in that. Because if there's no one else that can do it, you've got the chops, you've got, the chutzpah and the skills and the knowledge to do it. It may be faster for me to do it in an hour than it is to have them train someone else to do it in 2 days, right? That's just point blank. And so I think, again, building relationship first with these people is going to be great. And it's not just speaking to them. You build relationships, yes, by what you say, but also by your actions. So any quick wins that you can achieve from those conversations where you've been building rapport is going to be fantastic, right? And so, and you know yourself and you know the tasks. So understanding what is truly a quick win. A quick win is not something that's going to take months and months of planning, ladies and gentlemen. A quick win is something that you can do in 2 to 3 days, maybe 5 days max from the time that they told it to you. And you know it's going to be something quick for them, right? So those are some of the ways that I've built rapport so that when the time comes, I can push back. But you need to understand the dynamic of the organization and the time frame of where you are in whatever workflow or cycle cadence that they have in the organization.
You should write for all of us, Regina, a guide about how to set boundaries without being too rigid and stubborn, like Andrew mentioning in the chat, and how not to be people pleaser and having this balance about what we can do and what is involving. I think it will be very helpful if one day in one of your posts you want
Yes.
to you want to provide that. But yes, I agree with your point, and I think it's something that a lot of our internal comms professional and overall in comms struggle with putting boundaries without being too rigid, without being too a people pleaser. But I also would like to ask you, once we understand this part, how do we anchor our work in business outcome? Like we talk about risk, retention,
Yeah.
or trust when we talk about our KPI. So how can we connect both when we try to have this more strategic approach?
Yeah. So here's the thing that I want people to get through our very thick and beautiful skulls. You don't need to own a metric to influence it. Okay, I'm going to say it again slowly. You do not need to own a metric to influence it. Okay. And the frame and the thinking around this is most typically HR owns retention, right? And finance owns cash flow, the money going in, the money going out. Now, comms and internal comms specifically is communication, right? And it has, to be quite frank, a significant impact lever, if you will, on both of those, both retention and both cash flow, right? And I'm not saying that your job is to take over the responsibility of HR and finance. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying that what you need to do is you need to figure out how communication is going to either close a gap so that those outcomes can be achieved, right? The keeping employees in the organization, making sure that cash flow goes properly within the organization, right? Or, for example, the cash flow thing. If there is a tool that people are not using and you can see that, right? Or leaders are complaining to you about it. Maybe you do more training on that tool so they can get better use out of it. Or recommend that maybe there's a different tool. If nobody's using it, get rid of that tool, right? It's as simple. Create a plan about how you're going to do it to get rid of that tool and how you're going to communicate that to employees, for example. So you need to be looking at what are the outcomes that the organization is trying to achieve. And every org does this, right? Like I told you, Couchbase's fiscal year starts February 1. And they've been working for the last 2 months on what our objectives and recommended outcomes, desired outcomes are going to be for our next fiscal year. And you can see that is publicly available at the company level. And then each department says how we're going to move up to those main ones that were set at the executive level, right? So I want to make sure that you understand that example as well. But then here's another truth to kind of, put in your back pocket is, and I said it earlier, so don't act brand new. You have to build relationships and be curious. Joanna Parson always says, be curious, be curious, be curious, be curious, people. Curious people observe things. I'm not saying to be a detective, to go snooping for crimes within the organization, to be able to report them. What I'm saying is be observant enough, have your nose to the, what is it? Nose to the grindstone, ear to the ground, however these sayings go in English, I don't know. So that way you can see what some of the underlying issues are and how comms can solve them, right? So you're going to have your business as usual. You're going to have special projects that come up, right? Like one of my special projects last year was, helping to go from a public to a private company. That wasn't on my bingo card for 2025, but that was a special project. And then there are projects that I was the person that helped to put them together. For example, we launched our work from any base policy. I had taken advantage of it the summer before. Several senior executives had also taken advantage of the policy before it was formalized. And then I was tasked with putting the policy together because I was the one that used it, that understood the mechanisms of it, etc. And so that was a project that I created for myself, if you will. And so be observant and understand how comms can help to alleviate some of the underlying issues that you may see.
Yes, well said.
Yes.
Before
We
we
got
move to
17
the,
minutes left. I want to be, again,
yes,
mindful. Ear to the
yes,
ground. Oh, thank you.
let's move to the Q&A question. And actually, I would like to ask you a question because
Yeah.
it's a question that people are asking me in the Markham Grid with the Markham Grid members and also with my friend in comms. So I would like to ask you, Regine, for people who would like to grow into leadership roles like director of communication, head of internal communication, reporting
Yeah.
directly to CEO and everything. What mindset shift is essential to help us move from execution to strategic influence? I understand we need to be curious, to ask a question, to understand the business, to understand also the metric. But if you could give one advice for people who want this transition to grow in their career, what will be?
Y'all not going to like this
Tell
because I've
me.
said some of it already. The truth of the matter is, a lot of this stuff is uncomfortable. The pushing back, the asking the hard questions, right? Trying to get more out of people. Y'all just got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's it. That's the best advice that I could give you because in order to move your mindset from thinking about how do we communicate this to what business problem are we trying to solve, that is an uncomfortable transition. Change, by the very nature of it, is uncomfortable, right? But just like the caterpillar that has to eat until it gets fat and then put itself inside of this big cocoon and wait for I don't even know how many days to get out, it becomes something beautiful. So you guys are going to have to get in this uncomfortable period where you are practicing and practicing until you build up those strategic mindset thinking thoughts and having those actions come out as well. Be uncomfortable, start with your thoughts, and everything else will flow from there.
Got it. Noted, Regine. Thank you. Guys, if you have any question for Regine, feel free to drop it into the chat. I will keep an eye on it. In the meantime, Regine, maybe you would like to share, to talk a little bit more about what you say in the beginning of this convo, what you would like to share. No, sorry.
Oh,
We have a question before that. What should be from Odile? What should be the relationship with HR? Great question.
yes. So I sit in the HR organization, but that doesn't negate how I'm going to answer this question, right? You should be building a cross-functional relationship with every major department in your organization, whether you work with them directly or not. Okay. The ones that you work with directly, of course, you're going to be meeting with them on a more regular cadence than those that you do not work directly with now, but may work with in the future. You want to attend their senior leader meetings with permission, obviously, even if you're just going to be a fly on the wall to kind of, understand better how this team functions so that you can better serve them in the future. I've used those exact same words to get into some meetings that I didn't have invitations to originally. And, with HR specifically, right? HR has a lot of data, not only about employees, right? So where they sit, who they report to, etc. So they should be a resource for you for data analytics, but they should also be, and particularly HRBPs, human resources business partners, people partners, whatever they call that in your organization. Those people need to be your besties because those are the people who the senior leaders are complaining to, not necessarily about the employees, but they're complaining to them about the processes within the organization. How can we make this better? What resources can you bring us, etc. They know what's said in the diaries of those senior leaders. So if you can buddy up to them, right, and understand, okay, at a high level, they don't need to name names necessarily, but at a high level, what big issues are you seeing within the organization? What are our senior leaders struggling with? What are our people managers struggling with, etc.? And how are some ways you think comms can kind of help with that? I want to partner with you to help your organization be more successful, right? So cross-functional relationships with those departments, getting to know those HRBPs, those people partners, because they know those details. And then again, continuing to be curious about the organization. The last thing I'm going to say is this. If you do not know how that organization makes money, you've already lost the game. So make sure you understand how the organization makes money. What are they doing specifically? Are they selling subscriptions? Are they selling services? Are they selling products? How? Where do they find their customers? Who are their customers? Understand that first and foremost and help it to inform how you walk into those conversations with your cross-functional partners.
Great insight. Before I wrap up, Regine, do you have a last word that you want to share or no?
Um, I mean, there's so many things that I can say, but the first thing I'm going to say is thank you. Thank you to Leah. Thank you to Marine. Thank you to the Marcom Grind for having me here. I am super passionate and excited about this stuff, not just to improve myself, but to help all of you improve as well. And so, if you have questions, you can feel free to ping me on LinkedIn. I'm super accessible and available to you all. And here's the thing, I'm just like you guys, right? I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm doing the things. So do not think that just because, I'm headlining this with Marine, that I'm this uber, like, person with all this stuff. I'm learning and growing just like you. And you all have a lot of things that you can teach me as well, because I'm not ChatGPT. I don't know everything.
This is a nice ending, and it's exactly the kind of conversation I think we needed. So thank you for everything.